Okay. Should be up and rolling any second. So, welcome along. There we go. There's a notification. Right, good afternoon all. This is recorded from yesterday at the House of Commons. The Home Secretary going over the asylum policy statement. Okay, so this is a bit of a replay. It was only yesterday. I don't think a lot of people got to see it, so we are showing you this today. Afterwards, I might do a separate one. There's something going on as well, a public discussion in Parliament anyway, about digital ID, but that's a little bit late this afternoon, and hopefully we would have done and dusted with this by then. If you're new along, please hit the like button and all that jazz. Make sure you're subscribed. One more thing, I'm going to post a link in the chat and pin it in the top of the chat, and there's a link in the description. It's to Mary Jane's PayPal. Her cat's gone in the vets today and she's expecting a large bill, and we're all struggling with money, and I know at the moment, but if anyone could spare a little bit to help her out, contribute. Me and Hammers have been sharing it, and I'll be very grateful if you could support her the way she supports all of us and helps us out. Not just moderating, behind the scenes with numerous other things. All right. That would be much appreciated. Okay. So let's go over and let's get this rolling. And I'll remember to turn my mics off. Right. Cheers, everyone.
Could they do so quickly and quietly? That's given the front benches a couple of moments to swap over. Before I call the Home Secretary to make her statement, I'm sorry that once again Mr. Speaker has asked me to remind ministers of the requirement in the government's own ministerial code that major new policy announcements should be made in this House in the first instance and not to the media. This afternoon's statement has already been the subject of very extensive media coverage, both over the weekend and this morning, including a lot of policy detail. Honourable and right honourable members on the government benches were very quick to criticise ministers in the previous government for this kind of behaviour, but the Home Office seems to have a particular problem with making media announcements before ministers come to make statements to the House. I know that the committee chaired by the Honourable Member for North Dorset is looking at this matter, and I look forward to reading their recommendations. Statement. Asylum policy. The Home Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your permission, I will make a statement about how we restore order and control to our borders. I do so as this government publishes the most significant reform to our migration system in modern times. This country will always offer sanctuary to those fleeing danger. But we must also acknowledge that the world has changed, and our asylum system has not changed with it. Our world is a more volatile and more mobile place. Huge numbers are on the move. While some are refugees, others are economic migrants seeking to use and abuse our asylum system. And even genuine refugees are passing through other safe countries, searching for the most attractive place to seek refuge. The burden that has fallen on this country has been heavy. 400,000 have sought asylum here in the last 4 years. Over 100,000 people now live in asylum accommodation, and over half of refugees remain on benefits 8 years after they have arrived. To the British public who foot the bill, the system feels out of control and unfair. It feels that way because it is. The pace and scale of change has destabilised communities. It is making our country a more divided place. There will never be a justification for the violence and racism of a minority. But if we fail to deal with this crisis, we will draw more people down a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred. I have no doubt about who we really are in this country. We are open, tolerant, and generous. But the public rightly expect that we can determine who enters this country and who must leave. To maintain the generosity that allows us to provide sanctuary, we must restore order and control. Rather than deal substantively with this problem, the last Conservative government wasted precious years and £700 million on their failed Rwanda plan, with the lamentable result of just 4 volunteers removed from the country. As a result, they left us with the grotesque chaos of asylum seekers housed in hotels, shuttled around in taxis, with the taxpayer footing the bill. My predecessor as Home Secretary picked up this dreadful inheritance and rebuilt the foundations of a collapsed asylum system. Decision-making has been restored, with a backlog now 18% lower than when we entered office. Removals have increased, reaching nearly 50,000 under this government. Immigration enforcement has hit record levels, with over 8,000 arrests in the last year. The Border Security Bill is progressing through Parliament, and my predecessor struck a historic agreement with the French, which means small boat arrivals can now be sent back to France. These are vital steps, but we must go further. Today we have published Restoring Order and Control, a new statement on our asylum policy. Its goals are twofold. Firstly, to reduce illegal arrivals into this country, and secondly, to increase removals of those with no right to be here. It starts by accepting an uncomfortable truth. While asylum claims fall across Europe, they are rising here. And that is because of the comparative generosity of our asylum offer, when compared to so many of our European neighbours. This generosity is a factor that draws people to these shores on a path that runs through other safe countries. Nearly 40% come on small boats and over perilous channel crossings, but a roughly equal number come here legally via a visitor, work or study visa and then go on to claim asylum. They do so because refugee status is the most generous route into this country. An initial grant lasts 5 years, which is then converted almost automatically into permanent settled status. In other European countries, things are done differently. In Denmark, refugee status is temporary and they provide safety and sanctuary until it is possible for a refugee to return home. In recent years, asylum claims have hit a 40-year low. And now, across Europe, countries are tightening their systems in similar ways. We must act too. We will do so by making refugee status temporary, not permanent. A grant of refugee status will last 2.5 years, not 5. It will be renewed only if it is impossible for a refugee to return home. Permanent settlement will now come at 20 years, not 5. I know this country welcomes people who contribute, and for those who want to stay and are willing and able to, we will create a new work and study visa route solely for refugees, with a quicker path to permanent settlement. To encourage refugees into work, we will also consult on removing benefits for those who are able to work but choose not to. Outside of the most exceptional circumstances, family reunion will not be possible, with a refugee only able to bring family over if they have joined a work and study route and if qualifying tests are met. While over 50,000 were granted refugee status in the last year, more than 100,000 claimants and failed asylum seekers remain in taxpayer-funded accommodation. And we know that criminal gangs use the prospect of free bed and board to promote their small boat crossings. We have already announced that we will empty asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament, and we are exploring a number of large military sites as an alternative. We will now also remove the 2005 legislation that created a duty to support asylum seekers, reverting to a legal power to do so instead. While we will continue to support those who play by the rules, those who do not, be that through criminality or antisocial behaviour, can have their support removed. We will also remove our duty to support those who have a right to work. It is right that those who do receive support pay for it if they can. So those with income or assets will have to contribute to the cost of their stay. This will end the absurdity that we currently experience, where an asylum seeker receiving £800 each month from his family and who had recently acquired an Audi was receiving free housing at the taxpayer's expense, and the courts judged that we could do nothing about it. Mr. Speaker, these measures are designed to tackle the pull factors that draw people into this country. But reducing the number of arrivals is just half of the story. We must also enforce our rules and remove those who have no right to be here. This will mean restarting removals to countries where they have been paused. In recent months, we have begun voluntary removal of failed asylum seekers to Syria once again. However, there are still many failed asylum seekers here from Syria, most of whom fled a regime that has since been toppled. Other countries are planning to enforce removals, and we will follow suit. Where a failed asylum seeker cannot be returned home, we will also continue to explore the possibility of return hubs, with negotiations ongoing. We must remove those who have failed asylum claims, regardless of who they are. Today, we are not removing family groups, even when we know that their home country is perfectly safe. There are, for instance, around 700 Albanian families living in taxpayer-funded accommodation, having failed their asylum claims. This is true despite an existing returns agreement, and that Albania is a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. So we will now begin the removal of families. Where possible, we will encourage a voluntary return, but where an enforced return is necessary, that is what we will do. Where the barrier to a return is not the individual nor the UK government, but the receiving country, we will take action. I can announce today that we have told Angola, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Namibia that if they do not comply with international rules and norms, we will impose visa penalties on them. And I am sending a wider message here. Unless other countries heed this lesson, further sanctions will follow. Much of the delay in our removals, however, comes from the sclerotic nature of our own system. In March of this year, the appeals backlog stood at 51,000 cases. This government has already increased judicial sitting days, but reform is required. So we will create a new appeals body staffed by professional independent adjudicators, and we will ensure there is early legal representation available to advise claimants and ensure their issues are properly considered. Cases with a low chance of success will be fast-tracked, and claimants will have just one opportunity to claim and one to appeal, ending the merry-go-round of claims and appeals that frustrate so many removals. While some barriers to removal are the result of process, others are substantive issues related to the law itself. There is no doubt that the expanded interpretation of parts of the European Convention on Human Rights has contributed. This is particularly true of Article 8, the right to a family life. The courts have adopted an ever-expanding interpretation of this right, and as a result, many people have been allowed to come to this country when they would otherwise have had no right to. And we have been unable to remove others when the case for doing so seems overwhelming. This includes cases like an arsonist sentenced to 5 years in prison, whose deportation was blocked on the grounds that his relationship with his sibling may suffer. And more than half of those detained are now delaying or blocking their removal by raising a last-minute rights claim. Article 8 is a qualified right. That means we are not prevented from removing individuals or refusing an application to move to the UK if it is in the public interest. To narrow Article 8 rights, we will therefore make 3 important changes in both domestic law and our immigration rules. Firstly, we will define what exactly a family is, narrowing this down to parents and their children. Secondly, we will define the public interest test so the default becomes a removal or refusal, with Article 8 rights only permissible in the most exceptional circumstances. Thirdly, we will tighten where Article 8 claims can be heard, ensuring only those who are living in the UK can lodge a claim rather than their family members overseas, and that all claims are heard first by the Home Office and not in a courtroom. We will also pursue international reform of a second element of the European Convention, the application of Article 3, the prohibition on torture and inhuman, degrading treatment or punishment. We will never return anyone to be tortured in their home country. But the definition of degrading treatment has expanded into the realm of the ridiculous. Today we have criminals we seek to deport, but discover we cannot because the prisons in their home country have cells that are deemed too small, or even mental health provision that is not as good as our own. As Article 3 is an absolute right, a public interest test cannot be applied. For that reason, we are seeking reform at the Council of Europe, and we do so alongside international partners who have raised similar concerns. But it is not just international law that binds us. According to data from 2022, over 40% of those detained for removal claimed they were modern-day slaves. This well-intentioned law is being abused by those who seek to frustrate a legitimate removal. So I will bring forward legislation that tightens the modern slavery system to ensure that it protects those it was designed for and not those who seek to abuse it. Taken together, Madam Deputy Speaker, these are significant reforms. They are designed to ensure our asylum system is fit for the modern world and that we retain public consent for the very idea of providing refuge. We will always be a country that offers protection to those fleeing peril, just as we did in recent years when Ukraine was invaded, when Afghanistan was evacuated, and when we repatriated Hong Kongers. For that reason, as order and control is restored, we will open new, capped, safe and legal routes into this country. These will make sponsorship the primary means by which we resettle refugees, with voluntary and community organisations given greater involvement to both receive refugees and support them, working within caps set by government. We will also create a new route for displaced students to study in the UK and another for skilled refugees to work here. And of course, we will always remain flexible to new crises across the world as they happen. I know the British people do not want to close the doors, but until we restore order and control, those who seek to divide us will grow stronger. It is our job as a Labour government to unite where there is division. So we must now build an asylum system for the world as it is, one that restores order and control, one that opens safe and legal routes to those fleeing danger across the world, and one that sustains our commitment to providing refuge for this generation and those to come. I know the country we are. We are open, tolerant and generous. We are the Greater Britain that those on this side of the House believe in, not the littler England that some would wish we would become. These reforms are designed to bring unity where others seek to divide. Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement, most of which I read in the Sunday Telegraph, actually. But I am pleased that she is bringing forward measures to crack down on illegal immigration. It's not enough, But it is a start, and it's also a change. It's a change from her previous position in opposition of a general amnesty for illegal migrants. But I do want to praise the new Home Secretary, Madam Deputy Speaker. She's bringing fresh energy and a clearer focus to this problem, and she has got more done in 70 days in the job than her predecessor did in a year. She seems to get what many on the benches behind refuse to accept. She is right to say that if we fail to deal with the crisis, we will draw more people to a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred. But we will also allow our English Channel to operate as an open route into this country for anyone prepared to risk their lives and pay criminal gangs. This is not fair. It is not fair on British citizens, it is not fair on those who come here legally, and it is not fair on those in genuine need who are pushed to the back of the queue because the system is overwhelmed. Anyone who cannot see by now that simply tinkering with the current system isn't going to fix this problem is either living in la-la land or being willfully obstructive. It is a shame that it has taken Labour a year in office to realise there is a borders crisis. Yes. I don't know why they're chuntering. What was their first act in government? Her predecessor's first act was to scrap the Rwanda plan, which was already, yes, they're cheering, it was already starting to act as a deterrent before it even got off the ground. And before it started, Labour threw away all of our hard work, the taxpayers' money. They're the ones who have wasted their money, not us. But this statement, Madam Deputy Speaker, is an admission that her predecessor's immigration and borders bill will not work. But I'm glad to see them now changing course. The powers they're using in this bill, they all voted down when we were in government. They wouldn't be able to do that if we hadn't got it through. None of them know the work that was done. They're just cheering nonsensically, but we know what has happened since they came into office. In fact, the Home Secretary will know that in the 70 days that she has been in office, 10,000 people have crossed the Channel. And in the last year, we have seen record levels of asylum claims. The problem has got worse since Labour came into office and is getting even worse by the day. But I am afraid to tell her that what she is announcing is not going to work on its own. And some of these measures will, in fact, take us backwards. I say that to her with no ill will, and I hope she believes me when I say I genuinely want her to succeed. Because on this side of the House, we are speaking from experience. We know how difficult this is. It is, we are. And we're not going to take any lectures from the people who voted down every single measure to control immigration. Some of the measures she is announcing today, Madam Deputy Speaker, are undoubtedly positive steps. Baby steps, but positive nonetheless. We welcome making refugee status temporary, and we welcome removing the last Labour government's legislation that created a duty to support asylum seekers. She's right to do that. Yeah. However, some of what she is announcing simply does not go far enough. On this side of the House, we believe that anyone who arrives illegally, especially from safe countries, should be deported and banned from claiming asylum. Does the Home Secretary agree that anyone who comes to this country illegally should be deported? I'd like to know, I think the country would like to know, because this announcement means that some people who arrive will be allowed to stay. They just need to wait 20 years before getting permanent settlement. That does not remove the pull factor. But the main problem is that for as long as the UK is in the ECHR, illegal immigrants and those exploiting our system will use human rights laws to block anything she does to solve this. I know this because I saw it happen again and again over the last 4 years. I know she is seeing it too. We even saw it this year with the Prime Minister's one-in, one-out scheme, which has seen people return to France come back yet again on small boats. I can guarantee that her plan to reinterpret Article 8 will not work. We tried this already. Strasbourg and UK case law will prevail. And I agree with her that the definition of degrading treatment is overinterpreted. But renegotiating Article 3 internationally will take years. Years we don't have, if it were even possible, but the fact is, it isn't. We know this because a small group of EU countries tried this earlier and they were dismissed by the Secretary-General of the Council of Europe. Her government did nothing to support them, so I'm not convinced that it's the Prime Minister's negotiating skills that are going to sort out that problem. The fact is, we have looked at this issue from every possible direction, and the reality is that any plan that doesn't include leaving the ECHR as a necessary step is wasting time we don't have. Just like their plan to smash the gangs or the one-in, one-out policy, it is time-wasting and it is doomed to fail because of lawfare. We have seen this all before. The tough measures will be challenged in the courts and blocked, the new legal routes she's talking about will be exploited, and the numbers arriving on our shores and disappearing into the black economy will keep on rising. If the Home Secretary is serious about reducing these numbers, and I do believe that she is, she must be bolder. She must take steps to deter illegal immigrants from coming to Britain and deport them as soon as they arrive. Our borders plan does just that, and I know that she has studied it in detail. I've seen the looks. I know that she knows that we would leave the ECHR and ECAT to stop the Strasbourg court from frustrating deportations, that we'd establish a new removals force to make sure all illegal arrivals are deported. We would end the use of immigration tribunals, judicial review, and legal aid in immigration cases. Those are the things that are slowing us down. And we will sign returns agreements that are backed by visa sanctions to ensure we send illegal arrivals back to their place of origin. I welcome what she's talking about on Angola and Namibia, but all of us in this House know that they are not the ones creating the biggest problems. We need to be bold, serious, and unafraid to do what the British people demand: secure our borders. That is what is in our borders plan. So I urge her to take me up on my offer to work together, not just because we have some ideas she might find useful, but because, judging by her own backbenchers' reaction today, she may find our votes come in handy. Earlier this year, we saw what happened when the government tried to make changes to the welfare bill. The Prime Minister was defeated by his own backbenchers and ended up passing legislation guaranteeing that more money would be spent on welfare. And it doesn't appear that his grip on the party has improved since then. So you can be sure that the MPs behind the Home Secretary are already plotting to block any serious changes she tries to make. We can help her with that. Why are they shaking their heads? We've seen them do it time and time again before. I would say to the Home Secretary, this is a genuine offer in the national interest. We will not play the same game they did, voting things down for no reason, but she must be clear with the House on these questions. How many people will be able to take advantage of the new work and study visa route? And what will the level of the cap be? Will it be 10,000 people? Will it be 100,000 people? The government has separately confirmed they will allow Gazan students to bring dependents. We oppose this, but can she clarify how the government will ensure that people brought to the UK from a territory under Hamas control are not a risk to our security? If she finds that the Human Rights Act and ECHR prevent her from enacting these proposals, will she use primary legislation to resolve this? Has Lord Hermer agreed? By her own admission 3 weeks ago, the Home Office is not yet fit for purpose, so why then are we creating the new legal routes for the Home Office to run? And will she take me up on this serious, genuine offer to meet and discuss how we can work together to resolve this asylum crisis, yes or no? I urge her to put party politics aside, meet with me and my Shadow Home Secretary. Let's find a way to work together.
Order. I was very generous with time then. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her response to the statement. I see that the Shadow Home Secretary has been subbed out after his performance at Home Office orals. But whether it's the Shadow Home Secretary or the Leader of the Opposition herself, I'm very happy to take on the Conservative Party any day of the week. And let me start by saying we will not be taking any lessons from those opposite on how to run an effective migration system or indeed an asylum system, because I'm afraid to say to the Leader of the Opposition, she knows that her party in government gave up on governing altogether. They gave up on making asylum decisions, creating the huge backlog that it was left to this government to start to deal with. And in our first 18 months in office, removals are up 23% compared to their last 18 months in office. So I will take no lessons from anyone opposite on anything to do with our asylum system, because they simply gave up and went for an expensive gimmick that cost 700 million quid, returned 4 volunteers and was doomed to failure from the start. I will also say, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition had rather a lot to say about the European Convention on Human Rights. I don't recall the members opposite ever bringing forward any legislation to deal with the application of Article 8, the qualified right to a private life, in this House. There was never a bill that sought to clarify the way that Article 8 should apply in our domestic legislation or indeed in our immigration rules. So I'm not going to take any lessons from the people that just never bothered to do that in the first place. It is this government that is rolling up our sleeves, dealing with the detailed substantive issues that we face and thinking of proper workable solutions to those matters. And I just say on Article 3, I think the position on Article 3 has changed across Europe. I was over at the Council of Europe in my previous role as Lord Chancellor just before the summer recess earlier on this year, and I was struck by the sheer range of other European partners who want to have this conversation. It is important, I think, that the British government leans into that conversation and seeks to work in collaboration with our European partners. The one thing that will not work is simply saying we're going to come out of the European Convention altogether. That is not and will never be the policy of this government, because we believe reform can be pursued, but that this is an important convention, not least because it actually underpins some of our own returns agreements, including the one with France. And so she talks about how many years it would take for us to think about reform of the convention, but it would also take just as many years, as she well knows, to start renegotiating lots of international agreements which would be affected by us coming out of the convention. So I'm afraid her solution once again will not work. And if she wanted to work together in the national interest, and look, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm always up for working in the national interest, because nothing actually matters more to me than holding our own country together and uniting our country. But they could have started by voting for the Borders Bill, which is currently going through the House and which they have voted against at every opportunity. So forgive me if I don't take this newfound conversion to working together in the national interest with much seriousness, because their own track record suggests it should not be taken seriously. And not be taken seriously, Madam Deputy Speaker, sums up the position of the Conservative Party. These are the people that left this government an abject mess to clear up. They gave up on governing. They gave up on running an effective asylum system. And now they turn up without so much as an apology to the British public, thinking that they've got anything to say that anyone wants to hear.
Before I call the first backbench contribution, can I remind members that in order to expect to be called in a statement, they should have been here from the start of the Home Secretary's statement. There may be members bobbing quite unnecessarily. Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the reality is we need an asylum and immigration system based on fairness and consistency. My constituency of Vauxhall and Campbell Green is a testament to this. It's a place that's been made richer because of the people who've come here from all over the world. Some of them have fled persecution and have made a home over many years. I meet these people every week in the community and including in schools, where I see those children excited about their future. When this government came into office last year, they were right to say that their priority in this area is to tackle the huge backlog of unprocessed asylum claims left by their predecessor. Clearing that backlog is a big task, Madam Deputy Speaker, but it is right that we identify who has a right to be here. But by introducing more assessments of those who've been here for many years, making new judgments on safety of a country will take considerable resources. So is the Home Secretary confident that these changes will not have an unintentional consequence and actually make it harder to achieve her goal?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. Let me assure her there will be both the administrative system and the resources needed to underpin the asylum changes that we are making. It is already the case that at the end of the 5-year leave to remain period, there is meant to be an assessment as to whether the country of origin remains a safe country or not. What has ended up happening, though, in practice is that has become an almost effectively an automatic pathway to permanent settlement. That is the thing that we are changing. But what I would ask her to do is look carefully at our protection work and study route, because we will be encouraging those who have sought asylum here, being granted refugee status, to go into work or to study that supports their integration, but it also means that they are making a contribution which actually will retain public support for the system overall.
Yeah. Liberal Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is right that the government is looking for ways to bring order to the asylum system. It was left in total disarray by the Conservatives. Sadly, the government has been too slow to act. Britain has a long and proud history of responding with compassion to people fleeing unimaginable horrors. That should continue in a way that is fair and sustainable. So we welcome some of what the Home Secretary has said on that score. But what is not helpful is the Home Secretary claiming that the country is being torn apart by immigration. Acknowledging the challenges facing our nation is one thing, but stoking division by using immoderate language is quite another. I will, however, welcome news about safe and legal routes. This is something the Liberal Democrats have called for some time, since they were scrapped by the Conservatives, leading to more small boat crossings. But we do have some concerns about the far-reaching detail behind these proposals, which seems to be missing. The Home Secretary is revoking the legal duty to provide asylum seekers with accommodation and says asylum seekers should support themselves and contribute to our society. But she is still banning them from working so they can support themselves, contributing to our society. That makes no sense at all. She relies a lot on Denmark as an example. Denmark lets asylum seekers work after 6 months. So will she. And can she guarantee that the burden to house asylum seekers won't fall on already struggling local councils? And can she guarantee that we won't see a whole-scale transfer of asylum seekers from hotels to the streets? And if the Minister for Border Security and Asylum announced to the media asylum seekers could have jewellery confiscated, is the Home Secretary doing this to raise money or to deter people? And either way, does she acknowledge that many British people will see it as unnecessary and cruel? State-sponsored robbery will certainly not fix a system that costs taxpayers £6 million every day in hotel bills. If the government plans to keep its promise to end hotel use, it must also process the claims of the 90,000 backlog of asylum seekers. Something the Liberal Democrats have a plan to do within 6 months, using Nightingale-style processing centres. Does the Home Secretary seriously believe that an overstretched Home Office, which has yet to clear the existing backlog, can also undertake reviews of every refugee's status every 2.5 years? The UK must continue to lead international efforts to manage large migratory flows, and because the flow of people comes from Europe, she will need to work with the EU on a solution. The Oxford Migration Observatory has identified a clear Brexit effect. That means people refused asylum in the EU now make a second attempt here, a consequence of the Brexit delivered by the Conservatives and the honourable member for Clacton 2. The Minister refused to answer earlier whether Brexit has harmed our immigration and asylum system. So I'll ask the Home Secretary now, does she think that Brexit has made it easier or more difficult for this country to control its borders and asylum system? And does she think reductions in overseas development spending will reduce or increase migratory flows? We have already made it very clear that we think leaving the ECHR will make no difference to securing our borders and will tear hard-won rights away from British people. It's encouraging that the Home Secretary has said that is not part of the government's plan. Finally, we urge the government to tread carefully, to act with fairness, to act with efficiency, and to act with compassion for local communities in the UK who want this resolved, but also for asylum seekers too.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have to say to the honourable gentleman, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a fucking packy and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see and that it is all, in fact, just extremist, right-wing talking points. But this system is broken and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken broken the system is, and to make it a moral mission to fix this system so that it stops creating the division that we all see. And I do say to him, I do not think it is acceptable or appropriate for people in this place to not acknowledge the real experience of those who sit outside of this House. We are supposed to be in here to reflect that experience in this House, and I hope that he will approach the debates that we will no doubt have on all of these measures in that spirit. He also accused this government of being too slow to act. I do have to say to him, removals of those who have no right to be in our country are up by 23% in the first 18 months of this Labour government compared to the last 18 months of that former Tory government. That is a government that is getting on with the job. We have made 11,000 enforcement raids, 8,000 arrests, and over 1,000 people with no right to be in this country as a result of those raids have been removed from this country. This is a government that has been getting on with the job, and this is just the next phase of our work as we deal with the broken migration system that we inherited from those opposite. He said that he thought that whilst people who are waiting on their claim should be given the right to work, I think he knows that would be a huge pull factor and increase the number of channel crossings rather than decrease them. That would be our experience in this country. That is why we are not pursuing that policy. But what we have said is for those who are granted refugee status in this country and who can and want to, they will be able to switch into the protection work and study route so they can start contributing to society. That will help them to integrate, and it will help the communities that they are living in as well. He knows full well that it is not the policy of this government to confiscate jewellery from those who are accessing asylum accommodation. What I would say to him, though, is asylum accommodation is provided to asylum seekers by British taxpayers, and it is right that if people have high-value assets, that they contribute to the cost of that asylum accommodation. I gave in my speech the example of a man who was in supported asylum accommodation paid for by his taxpayers and by mine, who was receiving £800 a month from his family and who had enough money to acquire himself an Audi. I think it is right that the British state should be able to say to such an individual, contribute. We're not saying that we would take everything away and leave that individual destitute, but I think contribution is a fair principle here. And I would be very disappointed to discover that the Liberal Democrats do not support contribution when people can afford to do so to the cost of their asylum accommodation. And Madam Deputy Speaker, he left his remarks on Brexit. I don't have any more to say about that. I'm living in the world as it is today. If he has things to say, I'm sure the House will continue to hear about them.
The Home Secretary should know that language that is not acceptable in this House does not become acceptable if it is attributed to others. She might like to apologise for the language used.
I apologise, Madam Deputy Speaker. I did not mean any discourtesy. I was merely reflecting the truth of words that are used to me.
And I think we all appreciate that. But please, can I urge members to keep their language acceptable in the House? Graham Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I start by saying I fully support the Home Secretary in a statement today. It is a fundamental duty of government to protect our borders and to know who is coming into this country, which we have not known for some time. She has set herself a difficult task, but will she agree to publish targets for all the areas she has outlined in her statement today, particularly a reduction in the number of undocumented and illegal entrants to the country, so that we can check whether it is working, and she may need to alter some of the policies if it is not working.
Thank my honourable friend for his question. What we won't do is set arbitrary targets or caps. We have learnt the lessons of previous governments, and I think that setting a number in that way actually cost public confidence. The better thing to do is to actually get on with delivering these reforms, passing the necessary legislation in this House, delivering them out there in the country, and then assessing them as they go. I have no doubt that there will be much debate and scrutiny in this place and in others about the success of these reforms, and I look forward to answering those questions over the coming months and years, no doubt.
Chair of the Home Affairs Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Madam Deputy Speaker. My committee, I'm sure, will want to look closely at the very significant number of announcements that the Home Secretary has made today. But she has referred on a number of occasions to asylum seekers contributing to the support that they're given. And I wonder whether she has made any consideration of setting up a deferred payment scheme much akin to the student loan scheme, so that people, when they are granted asylum and are in work, can start to pay back for the generosity they've received.
I thank the Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I do very much look forward to my first appearance before her committee, which I hope we can arrange very soon, and I'm sure we will be discussing in detail all of these proposals as well as other matters relating to the Home Office. Let me say on that specific point around further contribution, it is something that we are currently exploring. It's not part of the package of measures today, but I'll happily update the House in due course.
Joe White.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement? Would the Home Secretary agree with me that enforcing the immigration rules, including removals, is in the public interest? Could the Home Secretary provide greater detail on the action the government will take to balance public interest against individual rights?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. We will bring forward legislation in the next session on the specific ways in which we will deal with the application of Article 8 to immigration cases, and also how we will update our immigration rules as well. I'm happy to discuss with her how that legislation will be developed over the coming weeks, but the intention is to do exactly as I said in my statement, in particular to define what is a family, to define how the public interest test is used so that it is only used in the most exceptional of circumstances, and to tighten the who and the where of how Article 8 claims can be made. Taken together, we believe that that will ensure that we are able to ensure that the application of Article 8 is exactly as it was intended to be when the European Convention on Human Rights was first agreed to.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
On these benches, we generally wish her well, because otherwise the country, in her own words, will start falling apart. So it's a good effort, 7 out of 10. She clearly has strong conservative instincts. But does she fear that such is the misery in many of these countries that they're not really worried about how long they have to wait for their asylum claim to be processed? And does she fear that unless we do arrest and detain and deport people very quickly, then this problem will just go on and on and on? So she mentioned return hubs. Could you say a bit more about that? And could you have an open mind about schemes such as Rwanda?
On Rwanda, no. I think on the substance of what he says, he can't be right, because claims are down in Europe and up here. What I would say to him instead is I hope that he will approach the debate that we're having with an open mind, ditch the failed policies of his party, and maybe consider more workable solutions from this side of the House instead.
Lewis Atkinson.
To continue the UK's proud history of offering sanctuary while simultaneously reducing illegal channel crossings, the right way for refugees fleeing persecution should be through safe and legal routes that are subject to full security checks and controls, not by paying people smuggling gangs to cross the channel in an uncontrolled and unsafe way. So can I therefore welcome the Home Secretary's announcement that such routes will be created? And can she tell the House how quickly she envisages these will be implemented?
I thank my honourable friend. Safe and legal routes are absolutely the way that we should be seeking to bring people into our country, and not through the people smuggling route in the north of France and over the Channel. And it is an explicit policy choice that I have made to disincentivise people coming through that route and paying thousands of pounds as they do so to organised immigration criminals, and will privilege those who come through our safe and legal routes. As we get order and control into the system that we have inherited, these safe and legal routes will become more generous over time. They will start modest, the numbers will be in the low hundreds, but they will grow, and we want them to grow because we want people fleeing sanctuary to be able to find safe harbour here in this country, and we make we are absolutely proud of that position as a government. This route will grow over time. I hope people across the House will support that, but I think we have to get order and control into our system first.
Christine Jodin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think there would be general agreement that we have chaos in the immigration and asylum system, and that the government should be looking for new ways to discourage people from crossing the channel in small boats. But in what she says today, is there a danger that those people that we do actually need to come to this country legally, with the skills that we need to fill the employment gap, to keep our NHS working and to work in the social care sector, will actually look at this country now and say, no, I don't want to go there, and that there is a danger in this policy that that will happen?
I disagree with the Honourable Lady. There is no reason to believe that. What I would say to her is that if you look at the numbers of people that come into this country on the small boats, it's about 40% of all asylum claims. Actually, it's about the same number of people who come through a legal route, a visit visa, a work visa or a study visa, which when that visa comes to an end, apply for asylum. I hope she would recognise that it is important that we stop that abuse of the asylum system so that we can retain public confidence in the legal migration system that I think we can all agree that this country needs.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I now draw your attention to my declaration of interest. Over the last few years, 3 times as many people fleeing war or persecution have come to this country from Ukraine and Hong Kong as have come in small boats, but there has been no public outcry. The lesson here is the British people are compassionate and generous to refugees when the system is controlled, fair and gripped by the government. In 15 years working on asylum issues before being elected, I saw the dysfunction this government has inherited. There is nothing progressive about ducking asylum reform and allowing public support for refugees to drain away. Can the Home Secretary set out how these reforms will address the manifest unfairnesses and rebuild public support for the asylum system and immigration overall?
My honourable friend makes a very powerful point. This country is an open, tolerant and generous place, but there are conditions for that openness, for that tolerance and for that generosity, and they are that there is order and control in the system, and when people can see a system that is not working, where rules are being abused and not enforced, they do rightly feel angry, and it is important that this government deals with those problems so that we can have public consent for not just a new system that works better, but
Well, I don't know what happened now. I don't know why it froze. Um, oh dear. Okay, right. Well, they're obviously having problems. There's a lot of things going on. Just before I come online, there was a lot of sites going down like X and everything. So unfortunately, we'll end it there. Hopefully, we'll be back on in just about an hour for the House of Commons reference to digital ID. All right, guys. Thanks for watching all, and come and join us again. And thank you, everyone, for your support. We will catch you all soon.